You're welcome, everybody.
We have people listening from Eretz Yisrael, including one of our Bnei Chapuz.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, time zone also. Today's discussion is going to be about BLECH, and I'm sure you learned plenty of it already, but Chazal never hurts, and also we'll say some other Kedushin. Bisman Chazal, we understand that we were dealing with Grufa Ktuma. Mishnah gave us a heter of Grufa Ktuma. You have something on the fire, you left something on the fire, we let you go ahead and leave it on, but tonight that you did something to the fire. What did you do to the fire? Either you took out the coals, or you cut in the coals. You took it out completely, or you just lowered the flame with the coals. That's what Chazal gave us a head. There was no invention of anything more than that. Today, we can't do that. We don't deal with coals. So the only possibility that we would think of is putting a cover on the fire. That is what we're dealing with today. And that's what we have to understand and try to connect ourselves to the Bisman Chazal to know if there's any relation to be matter this BLECH. The first thing to discuss is, we didn't see it really, is Kedei Kanis, which was a little bit brought down in the Mechaber, which is, if you go ahead and you have a regular fire, and you turn over a pot on the backwards, and you put something above that pot, that's okay. That's called Kedei Kanis. That is, we're not really going to discuss that too much, but that's something we're dealing with, covering a fire. That means you're not dealing, the fire itself is as is, but you're covering the fire, and that's considered a Kedei Kanis, which we have a kula on putting something on the fire, or not just putting something on the fire, leaving something on the fire, that's Legabe Chazar, which is Sif Gimel in Siman Reish Nun Gimel, which is discussed this din of Kedei Kanis. That din is discussed to Legabe Chazar, but definitely Legabe Shia. When you have a regular fire, and you go ahead, very negay people shall shoot this now, shall shoot this is later, and you want something hot. So what do? You have a hot plate on for Shabbos. You'll take a pot, empty pot, you'll put something above, you'll turn it over, or you don't need a pot, a pan, or anything like that, and then you put something on top of the pan. That is what's discussed in Siman Reish Nun Gimel, Sif Gimel. Where we have more of that is what many of us are doing, is on Shabbos morning, you want the chalas to be somewhat warm, rather than being frozen or cold, so you'll put the challah on top of the crack pot. You have a challah, you put the challah on top of the crack pot. How are you allowed to do that? That's because there's a kedera in between. Between the fire, you have the, as I call it, the crack, and you have the pot on top of it, and then you put the challah on top of that. So that's comes even more, that's a HALACHA and Sefei, which we're not going to discuss. So that's where we would know something about not what they did with Bisman Chazal, something which, not that you played with the fire itself, just you moved it away from the fire, so we don't see a connection between the food and the fire, and now we mutter, that's even putting something on Shabbos. Now let's get back to our sugya of Shia on Erev Shabbos. So you have to have a heker on this fire if you want to go ahead and leave something on a fire on Shabbos. The first BLECH discusses what they had Bisman Chazal, a Tanner or Kira, and the BLECH in Siman Reish Nun Gimel, Sif Aleph, has a discussion, a machlokes between the Torah and the Rambam. BLECH de B'maschal Litein Olah. The Mechaber said, you're not allowed to put, it's
74? 72. Sorry. Page 72 of those want to follow, sorry.
The HaLachacha says as follows. On what the Mechaber said in the second line, that it's also Litein, Tavshil, B'Vaydoyim, La'ashay Se'ala, it's a Shia. This is, yeah. So, okay. So he says as follows. What does it mean putting on top? What does it mean now to put it on a fire? What does that mean? You have the width of the doifen of the kira, of the walls of the kira. That's what it means putting it on top. If you're just putting it in the hole of the kira. Even though it's covered, the fire is covered. And you're putting it on the cover. That's considered putting it on the fire. So I have Mefurish, Tur, and Rashi that say that you have it covered. It's covered. The fire is covered. That's considered non-covered. The Gabe Shabbos. That's what the Tur. That's what the BLECH is quoting us. B'shem the Tur. Zok the BLECH weiter. Midiber Rambam beper Gimel Halacha Dalet Shekasa. Ein Mashin Oise Al Gabe Ha'Eish B'Shabbos Ayin Sham. Mashma L'Chaya De Gabe Kisi Ein B'Chlal Al Gabe. Putting it on a cover is not considered on it, on the fire. Maybe it's like you put ashes on the coals. You're putting dirt on the coals, and that'll be mutter. I want to be medayik from the Rambam that it's mutter. Why? Because the Rambam says al gabe ha'esh. Why did the Rambam talk to al gabe ha'esh? Obviously, the Rambam feels that dafka al gabe ha'esh was awesome. But putting a cover on top, that's mutter. So therefore, the Rambam is mashma that not only putting dirt on top of the coals, which was man covering the fire is also mutter. That's what we check in the Rambam. And he continues on, and he says, "V'afal became," the last few words, "V'afal became tzarech iyam b'dayim." Okay? So now, let's go over this BLECH outside. Bad echo. Okay? He says that if you go ahead and you have a cover on top of the fire, not that I did something to the fire itself. I have a cover on top of the fire. I will bless. What's the halacha? The Tur and Rashi are mashma that that's considered not gar v'katan. Why? Simple. You didn't do anything to the fire. I raised it, but I did nothing to the fire. Therefore, it's not gar v'katan. The Rambam would be mashma that it is gar v'katan. Why? Because the Rambam says a mashin oiseh al gabe eish. You didn't put it on the fire. Zok to be halacha v'daita tzarchi. So now, when you have to be halacha, what comes out of the ma'aseh? The Torah and Rashi are definitely saying that that's not called gar v'katan. The Rambam, we don't know. Tzarchi. Mutter asr. If I would be a paisik, I would say 100% asr, because I have a Torah and Rashi that say that it's awesome. I have a Rambam that I'm not sure. So you have no way to be mad. In the Rambam, you're not sure about. The Torah and Rashi, I'm sure definitely that they would hold it's awesome. Try it, awesome. Right? It's like 3/4. Side Torah and side Rashi. Rambam, I'm not sure about. Therefore, Tzarchi and V'daita in the Rambam, and the Rashi and the Torah. So therefore, the Maskanas Advan, I would say, reading this BLECH, I would tell you that today a BLECH is awesome. Okay? Let's try to line it up, and then we'll come to the Maskanas. So, therefore, we have the Rishonim really discussing this. I told you there's no Rishonim. We have the Torah and Rashi that are discussing this. We have a Rambam. And not only that, let's see with the BLECH. What was his deal from the Rambam? The BLECH was, because the Rambam said, a mashin oiseh al gabe ha'eish b'Shabbos. It's mashma that dafka al gabe ha'eish is also. If you're putting the pot on the fire itself. But if I have something in between, that'll be good. Okay, what's considered putting something on the fire? If that thing is supposed to be in between, maybe that's considered in the fire. I have a question for you. So how did they cook that? Why would they put this on top of that stove top with that wood, that metal in between? Because that's the way they cook. So that's called a gabe eish. I think personally that dig in the Rambam is not such a stark dig. So maybe the Rambam would also agree that should be considered al gabe eish. His whole diuk is because the Rambam says al gabe eish. Fine, but that should be considered al gabe eish. So therefore, when Ma'aseh BeHalacha has a diuk, it's all that. But if you want to know what I would come out after the BeHalacha, reading this BeHalacha, I want to know what to do with a BLECH, I would tell you not permitted on Shabbos. Finished. That's how I would make the maskana in this BeHalacha. So let's see how things changed and why we didn't go with this BeHalacha. Let's move on to the next generation. Chazanish. Chazanish says in two places why he feels very strongly that there's no heter with BLECH. One reason is, he comes up with two reasons. One reason, the Chazanish says that I know of ketuma and I know of kedei comes. I know that something that you're making the fire lower, you're having an effect on the fire. You went ahead, you katum the gecholim, which means you cover the fire with dirt that disintegrates somewhat, and the fire is not going to go to its normal flames. That's one way. Another way I know if kedei comes. Dr. Chazanish, a BLECH is not kedei comes, and it's not keduma. Why is it not ketuma? Because the fire is as is. Ketuma means you're lowering the fire. How do you lower the fire? The fire is as strong as it can be. What I'm doing is I'm covering something on top of the fire. I'm being mesallic from literally putting the pat on the fire itself. I put a piece of metal in between. That's a very nice thing to do, but I did nothing to the fire. Therefore, Zok Chazanish, so to be medana ketuma, that you can't. What's the other thing to compare it to? Kedei Rekonis. Kedei Rekonis is also not compared to. Why not? Because Kedei Rekonis, it's very far removed from the fire. What do you do with our BLECH? The fire is burning, the BLECH is touching the fire literally, and the pot is right on top of it. So you didn't remove the fire from the BLECH. What you did was, you just put something in between. Make a taste to be mekel on a BLECH. Very stark svar. Chazanish said a very stark svar why you should not go ahead and be mekel with the BLECH. So we have a lineup. We have a BeHalacha that we said in Rav Yishayim, it's us. We have a Chazanish that tells us very mistabidic reasons why a BLECH should not be mutter.
Two reasons.
It's not ketuma, it's not kedei rekonis. So where in the world should we come, us Americans, and you went to Rav Chaim Kanievsky's house, or if you didn't go, you looked in the Rebbitzin, in that book written on the Rebbitzin, and you looked how the kitchen looked like? You ever saw it? There were like 4 beams actually, holding a pack like this much away from the back. You ever saw it? Look in the book.
That's kedei rekonis?
That's even more. That's like the fires over there and then my pots over there.
Why? The chaim goes straight up.
Yeah, but that's no shaykhs. That you don't even see anything.
How much is there a shear in that?
No, but if anything that you feel that it's not connected, that'll be enough. You saw that picture of him?
No.
You never saw Rav Kanievsky's house?
We'll have to
I never
see.
saw the house itself, but I looked in the picture.
You actually saw it?
No, I didn't see it. I saw it in the picture. In the Rebbe Kanievsky, what the winery put out.
The Batsheva Kanievsky book. Yeah.
Huh?
One of the best sellers in Jewish history.
Yeah. If your wife has it, if you don't have it, your wife has it. It's good night for us to read also.
What was the
What
fire? What was the fuel of the fire? What kind of fire was it? Gas, a regular gas fire?
Yeah, to me that's what it seemed like.
And they just held it on a four-posted,
Four-posted thing with the
like a tall stool.
a tall stool, right? I hope it was made out of metal. It could be made out of wood. The fire was so far from what was on top of it that
Yitzchak. Do they hear me? Yeah.
okay. So that's what at least I saw in the picture, and I understood. I didn't ask anyone, but I understood very well because I did not hold a BLECH, and it makes a lot of sense in what he's dealing with it. That it's something which is not ketuma, not kedei rekonis, out. Now, why is it kedei rekonis? What's kedei rekonis? Kedei rekonis is something which is not the normal way to cook. What's the mind of kedei rekonis? Kedei rekonis is not just that there's something in between. It's just not normal. You never see that someone goes ahead, you come home and your wife's cooking eggs on top of a pan, on top of the fire. That's not the way you cook. It's not going to get cooked well done with stuff like that. Therefore, that's why Dr. Chazanish, I understand why kedei rekonis, because I'll told you it's mutter. But today with a blech, it's a normal thing. The heat, you touch your hand on a blech, you burn. Right? It's a regular, it's on the fire. The metal is extremely hot. There's no reason why you shouldn't cook like that. You don't normally maybe cook like that, but that's not enough.
But no guy cooks like that.
No guy cooks like that. Okay, so we're going to explain in a minute. So therefore, Zok the Chazanish, that is not a hef. So the Chazanish, you think of a great Samachma, it makes a lot of sense. You learn the sugi a little bit. You see you need heke, you see you need keduma, you need something. No such zeicha of such a heter, and therefore today blech should not be a heter. We gave you eitzes last week. We told you to put it in a kedera chaysa. We gave you the eitzes the week before to have it third cook or half cook, chananya. But more than that, we're not going to give you eitzes. That's the Chazanish told. But now, let's get a little, yeah.
What did the Chazanish see in Vilna? The Chayri saw blech, no?
So let's let me see the question. If the Chazanish, what did he see in Vilna? No, but what they probably had coals over there. They probably had garbage cups. No, what they have over there. The regular ovens.
They had ovens. We have a picture of it actually.
We have to make a trip to there.
No, we have their ovens. We have pictures of their ovens.
What?
As long as it was possible, not.
Oh, one second. Oh, customer wasn't live with that. He doesn't man.
The lead to someplace.
Live to someplace, okay. Yeah. Listen, it's Barak Bunim. I'll tell you like this: the Chazanish doesn't have the problem so much. Because the Chazanish, oh, what's going on here? Someone sent the picture. This is what? This is
Not this one. You got to go to the other one.
Oh, this is interesting.
I'm on mute. Okay, I put my twist in. So hear me here, right? You have to go.
Who's putting on this? Someone's putting on this picture?
Yeah, this is a picture. You see the picture?
Yeah.
This is a old style wooden. Old style. You put the wood in there. And this is there's the kisui there in the middle.
This is in Kasana?
This is a stove from the time of, let's say, the 1870s, 1880s.
Oh, so this is the Mishnah Brewer's stove.
This is the Mishnah Brewer's stove.
That's the stove.
The kisui, right?
Wow.
This is the stove. You can
Okay,
see
you
the
see
other
that?
picture, the previous
Yeah,
picture.
wow.
You can see the kisui off. Show the Rav the first picture that we saw. There you go.
Wow.
There's the kisui off.
I got you. Okay, this makes it clear now. Okay, so now we'll explain. Okay, this is oh wow. Okay, so now let's get back to this. Thank you very much for whoever this was. Is he there, B'Shas Ma'aseh? This person's a Russian now, or is he Ukrainian? Okay. Like this. Now we have this. We're discussing now the Chazanish. So now I had a machlokes with the Baal HaChutshani. The Baal HaChutshani was the writer. I don't know. I wouldn't call it right. I thought it was more that Niskarel. It's a svarim called Chutshani. Niskarel, we know, was the nephew of the Chazanish, and beautiful svarim called Chutshani. There's many volumes. And the writer is someone, I think his name is Rabbi, I forgot his name. He lives in Yerushalayim. I thought he lives in Bnei Brak and he deals with the Niskarel always, and he's dealt with him. And Maisi, you traveled in once a week to speak to Niskarel and learn a few minutes. And with that, Niskarel relied on him a lot, and that's like today's Niskarel Tzvah, going to Niskarel Sefer, that's a Chutshani. Over there he writes as follows. He writes that if someone has a blech over one fire, the Chazanish would be made. We have a blech, we have a large blech over 4 fires. Right? But if you would have a blech over one fire, it would be made.
But who said all 4 fires are on?
What's that? Let's discuss. What's the chat? Now this is we have to work with this because then let's have the Chazanish on our team and then we'll go back to the BLECH, which is very negative, these pictures, which are very relevant. Very happy to put that on. What was his thought? He said like this. He said the Chazanish agrees. Why are we saying it's not Kedei Konis? We showed you a Sid Gimel that says Kedei Konis works. So why did the Chazanish say a blech's not Kedei Konis? Zok Mistapel. That the reason why the Chazanish said Kedei Konis doesn't work is it helps with avocado because that's not the normal way to cook. So Mamela, when you have a blech over 4 fires, that's a normal way to cook. Go to a catering. And they need a lot of pots on the fire. Now, they want more than just, they need the soup and a large good soup and this and that, a few different types of soups. So what do? They put a blech, as I said, mitzvah, you put a blech over the whole oven, the whole stovetop. And now, instead of just having full pots, you have 6 pots. You have in between, like this, you extended the flames. That instead of having just 4 places to put the pot, you could have put it on 6, let's say, right? Because now you have the whole stovetop covered. So you put on full flames. And like this, that's a HALACHA to cook. You ever saw this? Could be, right? You go to the caterer, Kenza. I can argue, you can argue. I don't think we'll find the picture of a caterer doing that. Maybe someone can find the picture of that. But right, it's a Kenza and a Zaza. The challenge is that in order to extend the heat into more options like this, instead of only having 4 places to put a pot, you put masha'enke. If I have a blech only over one spot, zok, the Yid B'Shem and the Sikirelitz, that the Chazanish will be made over there also. It's like God from there comes. Why are you doing that? Why are you putting a piece of metal between your pot and the fire?
You have a shinoi.
You have a shina.
Is it b'mayit t'chayim enough?
Okay, so that's debatable. So therefore, zok, the Chodshani, again, B'Shem and the Sikirelitz, that Chazanish would be made. Why am I so excited with this method? Because our crack pots, that you only have one, you don't have 4, right? You don't have any big blechs, you only have a blech over 1 fire, that'll be mutter. So even the Chazanish that acid blechs, here I go, I have a hectare for 1.
Matter crackpot.
Matter crackpot for like the Chazanish. I'm not talking about small crackpots, I'm talking about the crackpot, the flat ones. We're worried about Chazanish, you want to be Chazanishnik. We just lifted. You want to go to that family now, family tree, no problem. But the Chazanish mutter. This is what a Mr. Kirelitz passed. I was not too happy about this because the way I understood the Chazanish, I felt the Chazanish wouldn't be making. So I asked this to Chaim Kanievsky, and he said Tzarachi. Okay, Tzarachi is not going to get me too much to argue on a Vada and Mr. Kirelitz. I asked the then to have done Landa. You heard of him? Rishivin Salbot, from the biggest Talmid Chacham today.
We met him in Eretz Yisrael.
Oh, okay, fine. I wasn't such to be on that trip, but he's from the biggest Talmid Chacham today. I remember once I sat by him and I asked him, like 5 years ago I think it was, I asked him that the Chazanish is Nishbi HaGemara and Shabbos. You know, sometimes when you walk through the Gedalim, you double, question yourself if you really, and he says, I told him which Chazanish, and he says, you made the Gemara, before I didn't even tell him which Gemara yet, and I forgot already which Gemara where I started from, and that was it. That was that question. I'm just trying to show you what Talmid Chacham is. The kids, I asked him this shayla. He said it's partial like the Chazanish is also. You can't say such a thing like this. Chud Baal Chud Shoni saying B'Shem B'Shem Chazanish. He knocked it out. He said, "What's the fact?" He said it's partial because now Ma'ayit Achayim. What that Ma'ayit Achayim? You touch that thing, you burn yourself. You need Ma'ayit Achayim. Kedei Kamis is Ma'ayit Achayim. A pot that's covered over, that's that much space in between. Like I told you, if you get to look at that Londinsky book and you see how raised that those pots were, there was completely Ma'ayit Achayim. I saw no Chayim connected to the pot. So fine, so that's what the Chazanish would tell you that it's mutter. But you're going to come and just put a blech in between you, telling me Svarah seems so as that. No such thing. I wrote this to the Chodshani. I didn't have that land. I wasn't going to, go, face to face, tell him who was acting. But I just wrote him. I don't understand the Svarah. I never got back a letter, so I can't. I called him a few years later, a few years ago, and he said he never received the letter. I was not going to write the letter again. But by me, it's pashut that Mr. Kirelitz, I don't want to say so sharp, but I wouldn't go again. I always thought that Mr. Kirelitz wrote itself. Then okay, so we have machlokes to have what to be samacham. But seeing Chaim Kanievsky's house and speaking to Abdel Landau, for me it was already that the Chazanish already to say that the Chazanish was already too sharp to say that he would be making on such a case. So again, nothing wrong. We have to now work with the Hatter because we're still very stuck on what we're doing here. We have a BLECH that's Parshas Asid, and we have Chazanish that's Vade Asid. So we're a little bit stuck now to continue on to what the Hatter is to put a blech on a crack. Fine. Then now let's just discuss. Let's just finish
A
with
pot on a blech. A regular blech.
A regular blech.
A regular blech. Forget about Kedei Rekanis. A regular blech.
Kedei Rekanis that you can deal with. I would not need a charge from Kedei Rekanis normally. I don't know if you ever ate that with Kedei Shabbos. How hot was that charge?
No, I did not. No.
Never ate it, so you tell me. No?
It was not Zesha.
Okay. So many people were. I think it was easy to get in there years ago, especially to eat the Shabbos. I wonder how hot that charge was. But Akaponim,
There was no hot charm.
I said, I wonder how hot it was. I have no idea.
Because it was so raised so
That's what
high
I'm
from
saying,
this
yeah.
thing. But you had to eat chametz in Shabbos. What's
Right,
the share of
yes.
chametz?
Yeah, okay, so I don't know what he did exactly, but Akaponim, the way it looked, it didn't look that it was that much. Now, let's get back to this Chazanish itself. Who holds like the Chazanish? Okay, Chazanish could say the Bris Olam, that was like before the Shmir Shabbos Kelchasa. Shmir Shabbos Kelchasa came out of Shabbos. Everyone knew that was like the famous sefer on Shabbos. There were so many kutim after that, but there was a sefer before that was called Bris Olam. Bris Olam was Rabbi Binyamin Zilber. He was the Oznid, if you ever heard of him. He called him Binyamin Atzadik. He put out a sefer Bris Olam, and he writes, "Ladino like the Chazanish came ikir." He said there are people that are making. The aim was that minig Yisrael Torah. Don't give me this minig. The halacha is like the Chazanish. That BLECH should not be used. Then in Oznidbur he writes, people would say the Chazanish wrote a sefer, not for halacha, just for Londis. This, no, don't chas v'shalom say anything. The Chazanish wrote it in the sefer, that's halacha l'maisa. And Lavdavki was a Chazanish. It's not like he got lived in Neivrak, he was in Yerushalayim. It wasn't like, and he felt that is the halacha l'maisa, BLECH should not be used. There are others that went with that also, and felt that the Chazanish is halacha l'maisa. But let's realize, the Chazanish, in his belt, it was much easier to be made. Why? Because the Chazanish held the halacha l'maisa, which the discussion we spoke about last week, the Gabi Michael ben Nisai. The Chazanish felt that Michael ben Nisai is mutter yansi. You passed like Hanani Nikadin. We spoke last week, hosting of Torah, that in the BLECH, 2 weeks ago we spoke about, that in the BLECH, 2 weeks ago. In the BLECH, we passed in the Ikadin, the BLECH with the Rosh, that we go with the Rabban that you need it to completely cook. But like the Chazanish, you don't need to completely cook. It's the Katchila to leave something on the fire if it's Michael ben Nisai. So Chazanish didn't have the problem, but we're here in America, we're stuck. Because we want to be mashmeh like the BLECH says, we're more Chavetz Chaim, Yidden, more about Kabbalah, we want to be mashmeh the BLECH, so then we needed Mavushikal Tzarchai, and even the Mavushikal Tzarchai, still there might be a problem of Shiv's Stomach B'Yotolai, Charles Stomach B'Yotolai, therefore we're running into problems. What are we doing on Shabbos? How are we leaving food on Shabbos? Now, the Beis Meir is where we're going to start from. And he brings down the Beis Meir's insemination of Gimel Sif Gimel. He says that Rashi that says Kisi al Gabe Chalala Asad, the Rashi that the BLECH brought down, that's only in the case with Tzayir Chakir. And that's why that picture, if you can bring it up again, that picture, those old ovens, what the Chavetz Chaim was talking about, that oven's probably there since the days from Amal, and that fire, you couldn't put a pot on that fire itself. That cover was there because that's how they cooked. That's the way they cooked. The cover wasn't a. Yeah.
And Shuldik, Rav Pesach, if you can put, the Rav is asking if you can put the illustrated the picture of the ovens back on. He wants to explain it again to the Elam and the Kisui. Let's put back our picture set if you can. Okay, sorry.
Okay. So that was extreme clarity, and I never saw it so
we can do better.
Clarity, why to be mechalik the Beis Meir's chiluk of why is there a difference between today's BLECH and the BLECH that the old discussed. If you look again at that picture, and or we don't see it, you remind yourself, the oven had literally fire coming out of that. You couldn't put anything on top of in that fire. What you had to have was that metal piece that was made for that oven, that specific oven. So that metal piece that was made for that specific oven, that wasn't like a kisui on a fire. That was how you cook. So therefore, That's why that was not considered a kisui. That's how you cook during the week, and that's how you're gonna cook now. So you're gonna have that on. We can't say, oh, it's Shabbos on your mother, so I'm not gonna touch the fire. That was exactly how you cook during the week. Therefore, that won't be considered a difference of Heker of Shabbos. Masha'enke, Zok the Beis Meir, who was before the Chazanish, probably 100 years before the Chazanish. And he says that if, even more than that, 200 years.
Kveger.
Right. So therefore, he's telling us that when there will be mechadish, a new thing as a BLECH that's only for Shabbos, that's mutter. That's not Rashi. That's not the BLECH. So we came and started saying we have a BLECH connected us. No, there's no such thing. That's only the ovens from those days that the kisui was it was the kisui of the fire. But that's the normal way to cook during the week. That's when it's awesome. But if today I have a BLECH that's very clear, that's miyuchet for Shabbos, it's called the Shabbos BLECH. Therefore, once I will discuss the matter. Therefore, that would be considered enough to be a heker, and that would be enough for Shabbos to be mutter l'gabe shir. The Chuvas Maran Brisk says the same thing. He says, Adif Yosef, he says, even though it's not the Maziva, but as long as there is a hefsek in between, and you made this special, that would be considered ein ba pitpuk l'kula alma. Sure? So
Why doesn't the Magen Avraham the Taz discuss this? What did they do in Poland in the 1600s? This is 100 years later. How did they cook then? They cooked like the Grufen Ketuma of Shas.
Yeah, it's probably like we have to find the picture of that.
You find the picture of
40
that.
years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
That we're not going to find though. But
It's Mashma Blech said we understand it came into being around the time of the Beis Meir and the Ram Brisk.
They made something miyuchet for that. The BLECH was bringing Rashi that was not the discussion with her. So when if you're going to learn the sugya and you see the BLECH, you say, oh, Blech Sa'aseh, that's not the truth. Because that wasn't, this is Beis Meir talking. That wasn't our blechs. You can't compare one thing to the next. That's why when you learn a sugya, you need to know halacha l'maisa. You have to think of what they were discussing. Doesn't have to be what we're doing. Now,
what did the Chazanish say? Chazanish knew that too, no?
Yeah. Okay. So now we're arguing. Till now we had the BLECH that are telling us Rishonim. So now we have already our Moshe's about to argue in Chazanish, right? We know that Agudah will matter, but to argue in Rishonim that we can't. So Moshe felt that no. I saw when I came in, you were learning the Moshe Chelik Alachayim, Chelik Aleph Simon Tzadi Gimel. He says that the Kisi Pach Ha'olam Noig and Haftan Ashes. Why? Dr. Moshe two things. Firstly, Ein Aderech Klal of Asher Ein Loch HaHeker Gadol Mizeh. There's no greater, larger hecker than that. Well, someone walks in your kitchen during the week and he sees you have a BLECH, he says, "Excuse me, what are you doing? Right? Well, what is this all about?" So therefore, Dr. Moshe that a BLECH is mutter. Now,
why is Rav Moshe say Olam Noig and Heter? Why isn't that the halacha? That's the question. What does that mean? Why
would we like to smith?
Right.
So I forgot your name. Rav Yitzchak. Rav Yitzchak is tiny, very good. He says everyone agrees that if you're going to put a sign, I'm extending the question a little. Everyone agrees that if you're going to put up a large sign, blue, red, all colors of the rainbow, it says it's Shabbos, don't touch the fire. Is that mutter? It's the biggest hecker in the world. Every Friday, right before Shabbos, put a piece of tape. The whole kitchen is seen. You walk into the kitchen, it blows with lights on it, and so no touching this fire on Shabbos. Is that mutter? Why not? Right?
We decide what a hecker is.
Oh, so what's the text?
Can I tell my daughter to tell me don't cook in Shabbos?
No. Why not? Good question. Why not?
Why is it different than a shimer for tefillah or something like that?
You put an alarm clock for davening, it's mutter, right? What do you do every night? Every night you daven someplace else, right? Maybe an alarm clock that 1 minute. But if you daven every night someplace else, you have to have an alarm clock. You have to have a reminder. But anyways, so why isn't that you walk into your back? It's right on top of your back. Says you have to do it because Chazal told us you have to be mind the chayim, or get the coals out, or be mind the chayim. Is a blech doing that? No. So therefore, you can't, we have to really, so I'm just telling you, but the minhag adam is to be made. What's the check? Because foot, it is memayet the chayim somewhat. Which means, let's say it's 200 degrees, the fire, let's say, whatever you left out, right? Right, so now you touch it, it'll be 199 degrees. Right? It's going to be somewhat of a difference. Right? True or false?
You're gonna burn your finger.
Burn your finger, but there is, besides the heck, there is somewhat of a meat in the chayim. Now, someone I think spoke about on the shiurim here, I think I overheard from someone last week, that today's, if you have a crack pot, if you have a crack pot the insert crack pots, which when we deal with the sugya of Atmana, we'll deal with the Shemzalmas from, but I don't want to deal with that now. So over there, putting the silver foil in it would condense the heat, not be mamayat the chayim.
Add to the chayim.
Add to the chayim. So therefore, the Magachir said, it would be a problem because you definitely need to be made the chayim some. Now, I just want to be ma'ira on that one or two. So what should you do? I don't know. I didn't have any outcome. I just heard for a 30-second conversation. He told me about it. So what the Paiskim would say to do is put parchment paper. But I just want to say that Matzia is not completely true because if you're going to be worried for Shlomo Zalman's Atmana and you're going to put racks underneath or they turn over empty tuna fish can, not a full one because you'll see tuna fish and all over. You wake up in the morning and it'll be all over the house. But Akapadim, if you go ahead and you put on, you raise it, then you could put silver foil. That's I just want to be clear because then the only reason why it adds to the heat is only because it's enclosed. But if you're going to raise it, then the silver foil has to go over, which hopefully we'll get to still. So therefore, you're not adding to the heat. So how do you do it? So if you find someone doing silver foil, that it doesn't mean it's wrong, because it will. In physics, it's only because the heat it's completely enclosed, so the silver foil
Is the Rav speaking b'das hachazanish?
No,
In other words, what if you raise the blech? We had this shaila earlier. You take two bricks and you raise the blech up.
Yes.
It's not like the Rebbetzin Batsheva's thing.
Yeah.
You're raising the blech. L'chari being a mic b'chaim, and you're making a weird hecker. Would that work?
Yes, that would work. Yes.
That would work.
Yes. Okay, so now let's get back to Lamaisa for us. So we discussed it and we said that that's why the days of Makilim, we started with very awesome, then we went down that no, pretty much Svardik to be Mekel, because it's not like it's a kisi from those days, it's a new type of kisi, and therefore very mustava the Gesvara to be made. So let's discuss what we have today. Let's say, I don't know what you leave on, I don't know what you leave on the fire, you have to have chum, right? Nothing to talk about. We all agree you have to have chum on Shabbos. So let's say you leave, either you're gonna have a blech. I think today most people just leave on a crack pot, right? That's most people I think today do. What do you do Friday night? What about obviously earned that we're not going to discuss today. That's the murder Kiddush from Moshe about that. We'll have to discuss that maybe next week. But let's talk about a crack pot. So what do you do with a crack pot? So most of us, I think, either you're going to take the store. They come already today with, you buy it. It's already tubble. Now you don't got a tubble anymore. Whatever that is. But okay. And then you also they come with a metal piece, right? You know that? They come today with a metal piece that you can put in between. That's one. And then they come also with a cover over the knob. Right? You know what I'm talking about? You don't have it? You don't have it? Other have it. But today, go to the store, you can buy a metal piece that's made to put in between. Fine. A homemade BLECH, beautiful BLECH. The shayla is like this. The shayla is that, let's discuss what your wife does, that she puts this silver foil, right? It's silver foil, BLECH. The shayla is like this. That silver foil, many times, stays there in Shabbos for Shabbos. Obviously, it doesn't make such a meal for you, because since it stays in Shabbos for Shabbos, you cook in it also. Does that work? Now that you struggle to cook in there, so now that became the norm, so it doesn't, it's a blech, but it's not a hecker anymore. Right? Friday morning, your wife's putting up the chalk. The silver foil is there. She doesn't want to go ahead. It's an ASIC to go ahead on Friday afternoon while the chalk's hot, take up the pot, put a piece of silver. She's not going to do that. She's going to put it on before. Right? Many people are doing this. Zok, it's when Alman, you mavatal the whole mile of the blech. Why were you mavatal the whole mile of the blech? Because the whole mile of the blech is that you made a hecker. Here you went ahead. What does it mean? It's not normal for you to cook. Today, every crackpot, the person is leaving that silver foil on it. So Mela, there goes the blech. There goes the half of the blech.
It looks strange.
But you did it the whole Friday. That's how you cook in the crackpot.
It's just it's a hot plate warmer. It's different.
We'll talk about hot plates, maybe next week.
Right. But what do you mean when you say hot plate warmer?
That's what we do. We cook on the stove, and then we put on a hot plate just to keep it warm. And we put an upside down baking pan.
Upside down baking pan is always good. That's Kedera comes.
The baking pan is flat. It's flat. It covers the entire thing, so it actually is a blech. It's
It's
so
literally
wide.
on it, or is that
It's on it. It's on it.
What?
Repeat the question.
Right. So Rabbi Black, right?
Not really black.
Rabbi Black, right? Black, right?
Flat.
Black as in color black. Yeah. Okay, Rabbi Black is asking that what he does, the person's getting a little personal now, and he wants to know what he does is he takes a
Hot plate.
hot plate, and that's where he keeps his food on Shabbos, and he wants a black. So what does he do? Instead of cutting every week a piece of silver foil, what he does is he takes this
Big one.
a big
It's a,
Cooking.
baking pan.
baking pan, a
Cooking
big baking pan, and he turns it over, and there's no space in between. It doesn't go on top of it. It goes on it. So therefore, that uses a black, and that he does already on Friday. So now his question is, could I go ahead and do that for Shabbos? Because that's how he does it the whole Friday. On what we're discussing. So now, Rabbi Black, you're 100% okay. Why? Because you're not cooking it on the hot plate.
Right.
You're cooking it on the fire. You're putting it on the hot plate before Shabbos. So that's okay. I'm worried about the people that are cooking the pot on the crack pots. That's where they're cooking. And while they're cooking, they have that same piece of silver foil. The whole time the silver foil is on, the cooking process was so. Zokim Shlomo Zalman, that can't be done. Because that's not a hecker. If you're cooking on that, if you went ahead and cooked on that, so that's not a hecker. So therefore, you should go ahead and make sure you cook on the crack pot without the silver. Comes an hour before Shabbos or whatever you want. You go ahead and you put that silver foil on in between your pot and the crack, and therefore it would be a hecker, and we're saying to HaRav, that would be good. Now, HaRav, some hold it, I got maybe two pieces of foil, one is mamish nothing, it's so thin that it's mamish nothing. Now, the shayla is like this. So good, so let's say you learned this HALACHA, now you know about the Zalman, very good. Your wife tells you, could you please check the knob before Shabbos many times you have to adjust it. Your wife put the silver foil on already an hour before Shabbos. Right before you go to shul, you look at a few things. One of the things you look at is the crack pot. It's on number 5, you want to lower it to number 4.5. Now, you're not going to go ahead and take up the pot and put the silver. You go ahead and you lower it while the silver foil's on. What do you just do? You just showed me that this silver foil is not a hecker for you because I play with it even though there's silver foil on.
Same thing with the black too.
Yeah, I'm just making it practical. Yeah, I know. Is that a time or not?
How do you define it? How do you define hecker? It has to be a permanent hecker. It's not changeable. Oh, I don't know if they heard me.
Yes, so Shlomo Gaddis was asking, we really have to define hecker good enough to understand, is this a hecker that has to be non-changeable, tachpatit? I don't know if you did this with your tachpatit, but on the bottom, does it have to be that it's cemented in? Or it's something that could change, but it's not the normal.
When I did the shear, I made a hecker.
Yeah. So I have there's arichas in this that I have on this, but at the bottom, Rabbi Gaddisman is right. Even when you can go ahead and change it, it's still a hecker. there's a hecker there. You changed it with a hecker. It's not like if I cook it completely on it, then I'm showing that it's worthless to me. This thing does nothing.
You went through a thought process. You thought, I have a problem. I'm going to move it. It's not Shabbos. Okay, I'll do it.
Right. Rabbi Yitzchak is tiny.
Yes.
Yes. Rabbi Yitzchak is tiny. He's explaining what we're saying is that, like we spoke about 2 times or 3 times ago, and this is the aside in the whole thing, is that we're not dealing with our buying. Chachamim didn't deal with people that want to be over. They want to be over, but then we're not going to stop them. They can do whatever they want now. No one stop them. We're dealing with someone just to remind you. When you came Friday and you went out and lifted it, first of all, we'll get to your Shiloh in a minute. When you came Friday and you went ahead and lifted it up right before Shabbos, and you said, okay, no, it's not good. Fine, you knew that, okay, now I can do it. That means it got you thinking, I saw a BLECH. What should I do? Okay, you know what? I'll lift it up and I'll lower it to 4.5. So now when Shabbos comes, I just need that 1 second thought that, oh, it's Shabbos. That's all I need. So that thing on it is going to remind me of Shabbos. So now, the shayl over here, I don't know who that was, asked a good shayl. Yes, that the whole cooking process on a crack pot, it should be a hecker within itself. Because you don't normally cook like that during the week. You walk into someone's house during the week and say, you cook on a crack. You ever saw someone cook on a crack pot?
I don't know. They sell billions of dollars of crock pots in America. So somebody must cook in a crock pot. Don't go into crock pots are only Jews.
The kosher ones, the table ones, the Shana Shabbos.
Right, that's our tefillah, another $25. Right? Yeah, so that's the answer to your question. But you should know that there is some poskim out there that feel that maybe just to cover, since you don't see the fire of Bechlal, I wouldn't even mention such a thing because we don't go with the Bechlal, but there are some Svadish poskim that say that just to cover it, since you don't see the fire and it's covered, right? Crack pot is also covered, right? Without your blood, you don't see the fire. That means technically what's hot is probably some wires in there, and then you have that metal cover on top. So that should be Gufa Tumah.
So in the wrong passage, you must have the metal cover?
No, I wouldn't say you must, because most of our chalents are already cooked with Chananya, and then you have the Chazanish to be making on the HALACHA, which has oil Naganach. So if you walk in someone's house on Shabbos and you don't see a BLECH, no problem. Because also, don't forget what we spoke about last week, we said that since it's meant to eat Shabbos day, we have the HALACHA that says, but the Evid anyways we make it. So if you walk into someone's house and you don't see a BLECH on his crack pot, 100% fine. Not 99%, 100% fine. You want to be mashmel, we spoke about it many times, Shabbos that, like a Bunim, so then a silver foil will be enough, and if you want to be even more mashmel, 2 silver. Now, one more thing to be discussed is, what does it have to cover? 2 things. What does it have to cover and how much has to be covered? And I don't know if you ever seen the next show, I think they have it. They have these metal pieces that are more like a screen. Because it has space in between. It's not a flat metal piece. It's more like there's holes in between. Imagine the screen window.
Yeah.
So over there, let's say, could you put that on the fire because there's something in between. So then we need that it should be guarded for cotton. This goes into the sugya of Rishonim. How much cotton does it have to be? Does every coal have to have afer on it? Do I have to be right to the Rishonim and around the back and all that discussed? Do I have to take out every single gechalim? Or if I take out most of it is enough? That's one discussion. So you have to make sure that your whole entire crack is covered with the silver. That's what you make sure. That's one nakuda. Another nakuda is, do I have to cover the knobs also, or maybe only the knobs? And that's a big machlokes. Ashtis, getting to the Takan's Chazal. We was Takana that the fire, they cover the fire. So over here, what you have to do is cover the fire. What the knobs have to do it. But on the other hand, you can say pukvaka. Today, what did they do on Mo? On Mo, they stirred the coals. So that's why I have to cover the fire. But today, we don't deal with the fire. No one ever saw, something's wrong with the fire. Really, you play with the fire? The knobs. So maybe today you should only have to cover the knobs. So to do a b'shem of iron, Man, I go in the Bangkok. He said that the knobs, again, the Rebbe brings it down from him, not brought down the Chuvas. So the Rebbe brings it down from him that the knobs basically are enough.
Are
Enough. But the other, if you just cover the knob, that would be okay. So now I'm telling you, these new crack pots, they have like a cover over the knob. That's all
built-in cover there?
Built-in cover, yeah. It's like a plastic piece.
Yeah,
A little plastic piece that covers.
It must be a Jewish crackpot.
Yeah.
It says the Jewish crap.
Or take off the knob. Take off the knob might be a real mic. Take off the knob is might be a real mic. That might be like Tach B'tit, which I don't know if you did the sugi of Tach B'tit, but that might be a real milah that even Kulam of that should be mutter.
Rav Vosner has an interesting heter. He says you turn the stove over to the wall.
Yes, that's a very interesting heter. Someone just asked. Hashem just asked.
Turn the whole.
Is that Hashem just asked?
He said turn the stove to the
No,
wall.
it says Hashem just asked. If you take
Look
it
on
out.
the screen, look on the screen.
Yeah.
We have it.
Okay.
So one second, so the
Oh,
Rav said,
Dr. Leibowitz is asking something. The D. Leibowitz. 1 second. That's a good nakuda. He just asked. Okay, it's getting late. Just that today, if they're putting that plastic on, so then invite you on that because that's how you're cooking. He's right. And therefore, if you look at it, you could take off that plastic and put on that plastic to cover the knobs. I mean, it's a piece that
he said it's on a hinge.
No, it's on a hinge, but you could take off that hinge. You could take it out. By me in the house, I have it.
Wow. Look how,
So look how true they are.
look how it's rubber stack is sticking.
They learned the sukkah like us. What do you think? It was a few like to learn the sukkah, and they came out. They have eitzah, right? Like they came out today recently with the you can open up soda bottles, right? They came out with
New
little
opener.
patent,
Yeah.
and it just goes up and up in price the more the Jews buy it. And like this, you can open it on Shabbos. So now they came up with this patent that they made for you a cover on the knob. You're right. That's worse than when it's made as a BLECH. Because over there, since it's on it and you just put it on, so that's not. Can you use electric tape to make it come up? One second, let's just get to this.
So about silver paper on the glass, or you need to hang the cover?
Right, so let's get to that. The Ma'aseh that Betzina and many others say that the best BLECH is if it covers side the fire and side the knobs. You want to get it better? So you have a piece of silver foil, spend another 2 pennies and have it cut a little bit longer, and then let it cover the knobs also. That's why the BLECHs from Amol, a lot of them, some of them came flat, but some of them came with the ending. It's definitely better to get that because, like we're saying, but if I have a choice to cover the knobs or cover the fire, rather cover the fire. Because that reminds us because it's Zman Chazal. The Zman Chazal that dealt with the fire, and that's what we have to do. Knobs is a hecker, but that might be a hecker like a sign hanging, which won't work. We have a fire to be Simcha.
Even though if you cited the Gzeir Shem Yechat, you
Yes,
can't be Yechat in the fire.
Right? True. Reb Shlomo is timing good. You said example, we have to deal with what the Zman Chazal, and that's where Abraham is the Chiddush. And when Dafka Abraham said it, whatever, Akabanim, let's go with the cover the fire. Best eitzah is cover the fire with the knobs. If you don't have that eitzah, if you're worried you don't have a silver foil, it's too hard to pack, pull up the knob, very good eitzah. Because once you pull up the knob, that could be the dam at the top. But again, we didn't do that sugya. That's a sugya that if you're tough with it, I don't have to cover anything. If it's hard to get to it.
Who can pull off knobs in a new modern range? Can pull off knobs?
Yes, sure.
Hey,
Not
change
that
it for Pesach, people change it. Yeah.
Right. So you pull up the knob, that is a very solid side. It's a hecker. Now it's something my you have problems. I wouldn't really, okay, that's to put that on top of it. But a component, or you put an electric, let's say you put tape over it, no, that. Okay, I see code. Lamaisa,
You have to cover LED controls, electronic controls.
that's a whole different sugya. That's not with fire. You're doing that stuff?
No, they can raise, you can raise and lower the fire with the LED controls.
No, I'm saying not with food. You have the LED on food?
What, remote? You do it
You can't
remotely?
raise, you can't raise, on the ovens.
On the ovens.
Ovens, right. Okay, ovens, we didn't talk about ovens today at all.
Oh, you mean on Shabbos because you're switching the button of items?
No.
What do you mean LED? What do you mean?
What's the blast cover? You can't turn the gas up and off and on. How do you turn ovens higher and lower?
You don't? When? On Shabbos.
Shabbos, so why is it not a chashuv of that?
Explain it. What do you mean?
How do you keep an oven open on Shabbos?
Yeah, I don't have a bluff. Oh, that's a very good problem. So we started speaking about what you have when you have two
Good.
pots in there. One is the stomach of the upper, the one is the stomach
Right,
ground.
I assume you can talk about ovens separately.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, okay, the kids are nicer, let's just make a sikun. We started with the halacha that said, l'chayre, there shouldn't be a heta of glass. The Chazanish said, vada, there's no heta. We came along and said that the halacha was discussing the way it was so well elaborated in that picture, that those days, the blechs were completely different. Today, that the blech is the heta made for Shabbos, it's made by you, whatever it is. So therefore, that's why we make it on blechs. And getting back to crackpots, we said a chumrah that it should not be put on before you start cooking. Make sure it's only put on afterwards. And to raise it and lower it afterwards, that we said it could be mekel, and therefore you should try to have a blech on. And the mitzvah next week we'll be discussing more modern.
Oh,
You should clarify by side, today's Tuesday, so we will not convene tonight. We will convene tomorrow at 11 o'clock, to discuss the river agriculture.